whatever is actually going on right now with the Celtic Tiger. Because it's weird.
Ooh, I never heard that one. A Celtic Tiger. What's up, everybody? Celtic Scarecrow back with another reaction. Get those 10s and 20 views. Yes, as you see, I'm working on a few things. You'll see the results of part of the experiment. Yeah, I'm trying to use StreamYard again instead of Restream. Let me get out of that. Yeah, I'm trying to use Restream again instead of Streamlabs to Restream, because for things like A, I can get that up. B, I think Restream constantly puts like the little things up in the corner where StreamYard I can literally have that, because Restream does allow me to go to other places, which is great. But I need a thing for OBS, which according to, hold on a second, a few moments later, a channel called Techrat. Link will be in the description of the actual video. How to multi-stream on OBS 2025 tutorial. Pretty much, because OBS big thing is like settings. You can stream to this location. It's like shit. It's only one. This little what's it called? Plug allows you to kind of bounce to a few other locations. So hopefully the Left 4 Dead test stream went well. But enough of that. Today we are learning some shit. I'm gonna say it bluntly, we are learning some shit from the History of Everything podcast. Now, you have probably seen this man before. He is the guy you usually see like a Roman helmet. I see him every so often in shorts with him and his wife. His wife's like, "Where would you rather live, ancient Rome or ancient China?" And he's like, "One, blah 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 blah," and he just gives you like this giant rundown. Very funny, very entertaining. Hopefully, he's cool with me, reacting to his shit. Hopefully, I don't. Hopefully, cursing is not a bad thing on his channel. Of course, his channel logo is above my head. Oh, sure. No, what Mariner shirt logo staying on? His channel logo is above my head. Titles below me, and link to the original video is in the description. Let's learn some stuff. And this one is why Ireland's amazing economy is fake. Not really a Halloween-related video, as the Celtic Scarecrow, reside in the haunted forest of South Jersey. The title caught my attention, so let's start learning. Take it away, good sir.
Ireland is in a really interesting position right now.
Yeah, it needs to reclaim North Ireland and just tell the EU to F off.
When you think of the top 10 economies in Europe, most people think of countries like Germany, France, or perhaps one of the Nordic countries.
Not France. No. I think Poland and maybe the Nordic countries.
Like Norway or something. But what if I told you that at the end of that financial rainbow, there lies a pot of gold that... okay, you know what, at that point, I don't want to continue the joke. It's Ireland. We're talking about Ireland here today. I already kind of said that here from the very beginning.
It's also in your title, good sir.
Yes, my friends, today we're going to be talking about the rise, the fall, the rebirth, and whatever is actually going on right now with the Celtic Tiger. Because it's weird.
Ooh, I never heard that one. A Celtic Tiger. I may have AC. I would have to pay him. I may have AC draw me a Celtic Tiger. That would... just hold on. I'm going to write that down in notes. Pay AC to draw. Celtic Tiger. Which you can fund me paying my good buddy AC, who does all my fantastic backgrounds. This one. He's technically who drew Tiny originally. He drew that back in high school. He has drawn the original channel logo. He has drawn the shield. He has drawn... Hold on. Boop. That background. And I think I have one more. That background. Yeah, he's really a good friend of mine. He's an amazing artist. He's also in the Air Force in Korea. So, I just realized I spelled history wrong in the. Wow. Words got away from me on the bottom there. History. History and of. Said of, god damn it. Yeah, he's an amazing artist. I definitely need to start paying him. And if you start subscribing, going to this channel, my main channel, Twitch, and Kick, and start helping me grow, A, I'll get a better model. B, I can start paying him to draw me some super fun things, like a Celtic tiger.
Ireland is seeing one of the largest exoduses of its citizens that it has seen in decades, if not centuries. Despite the fact that, on paper, the economy is doing really well.
Immigration. I'm going to go into immigration. That's why it's starting to do bad.
And so, in order to explain this here, my friends, we're going to need to tip our pint glasses down and drink up some context. Okay, yeah, that's the only one I'm sorry. I had to put in something.
You are dead, good sir. It is slightly acceptable. Not that one I wanted. I'm actively also trying to get ready for my stream tonight, which technically I'm going to do in a half hour.
Either way, the economic history of Ireland is something that starts back in 1922. Yes, I know technically everyone is going to want to go back older so we can talk about potatoes and the famine and everything else, but no, I probably need to do like a regular podcast episode on that. We don't need to go back that far for this specific episode.
Thank you. I don't need to be here for 6 hours listening to you. I would not have done that for myself. I'll try something. It's nice for experiments, so screw it.
Which I know, a number of you are waiting for me to dive back into the prehistoric times of Ireland in order to explain modern economic problems, but no, we are not doing that. Let's be real, I talk a lot. Managing to turn a 5-minute news story into a 45...
This an ad? If it's an ad, I'm okay with it.
A minute lecture about history and the background leading up to said event. I know. Oftentimes my wife is actually forced to tell me to get to the point, and I see it in the comments from some of you on here as well. That is why today I'm actually happy to be sponsored by Plod AI, something that genuinely might be one of the most useful products I've ever encountered as a professional yapper. And oh my god, I really wish that I had this thing back when I was a student. In short, when people use Plod devices, which is what I have right here in my hands, to record meetings, lectures, and discussions, the Plod app goes and generates transcript notes, it summarizes the agenda.
Holy crap, as a dyslexic, I would have loved this. Christ. As someone who is dyslexic, I would have loved to have something that would just give me the bulletin points like this.
Does and highlights key parts. Like, dear God, where was this when I was a student? The amount of lectures that I could have actually had help with.
Dude, this could save dyslexic people.
Seriously, when Plod is on, whether it is attached to your phone for business meetings or to your chest or desk for a lecture, it quite literally goes and takes notes for you, canceling out noise, enhancing human speech so that you can focus on the work at hand. Not only does it do this, but it identifies words from different participants, and it understands 112 languages and accents, which makes it stupidly valuable for me personally.
Accents?
Every time I have to watch a video or listen to something in another language when I'm doing research on the topics that I'm presenting to you. Then, when I have to actually go back and find the information that I need, it's extremely easy, because Plod comes with Ask Plod, a ChatGPT-like function that acts as my own personal secretary and is fully compliant with US and EU privacy and data law. You need help drafting an email? Ask AI. Want to pull data for a report? Ask AI. It can even help you delegate tasks to your team if you have one, all with minimal...
Yeah, I like it for the study aspect. Everything else, learn to get good.
Effort on your part and without taking away anything from your phone battery, because it's a completely separate thing. Genuinely, I say this as a creator. From a business or educational perspective, this has got to be one of the greatest and most powerful tools I've ever seen come out of AI tech that doesn't cheapen the work of people that actually put work into their craft. You see that a lot with AI nowadays, and this is definitely not it. I cannot recommend Plod enough, so click my link down in the description or use my code and get 10% off and save yourself so much pain and hassle. Thank you, Plod, for sending this to me and for sponsoring this video. And now, my friends, back to the show. This point back in 1922 is...
Okay, good ad. Like I said, as someone who's dyslexic, who had trouble taking notes, that would be great. Oh my god, imagine this thing during like a D&D session. That would be hilarious.
Is when the country of Ireland
okay, back to history
would gain its independence. Back then, at that time, it's...
Damn right, it took us long enough.
Its economy was largely that of farming and agricultural goods. And aside from this, the giants of the Irish economy were two companies based in Dublin that became known as Beer and Biscuits, which, though
I think we all recognize, this logo right here. Even if you're not an alcoholic, or someone like me who's straight edge, that's
those
Guinness.
companies were Guinness and Jacobs. Things would continue like this here for a bit, and protectionism was introduced by Sean Lemass in 1932, this being at a time when
Why does he look blurry? Sir, are you not recording yourself in good quality?
the entire world's economy kind of went to crap, and that is kind of where Ireland stayed for a while. Unlike other nations that got involved in World War II and then experienced the surge afterwards economically, the economy of Ireland was isolated. From 1945,
Well, yeah, you figure, I think for a long ass time, Ireland just got its independence that's like 20 years ago. 1918, Bloody Sunday. Like, it took them almost to World War One for Ireland to get its independence from Great Britain. So you figure they only been around for 20 years, so they really don't have a military per se.
to 1960, Ireland missed out on the European economic boom across the region. And because of this, 500,000 people would choose to emigrate from the country. A major policy change would then follow, and in 1958, the Republic of Ireland began to slowly embrace the industrial world.
They also need to hijack Northern Ireland back.
Lemass would reverse his policies in 1959, and the economy once again actually started to grow. And this is where I need to kind of explain something here, because usually when I talk about economics and history and the issues that a lot of countries face, it is usually a problem of severe overspending as well as government abuse. That is something that is extremely common, especially when talking about corruption in the modern day and age.
Corruption in any day and age.
Ireland had a very different issue.
All right, guesses on what it is. Yes, I paused. It's an ad on there. I'm going to go with the fact that people keep leaving and trying to go to somewhere like London. Like, the immigration is what's going to hurt Ireland.
Between 1920 and 1950, budget deficits were largely very controlled. Debt interest rarely exceeded 2% of the total value of goods and services produced in the country, the gross national product, or GNP. And as it turns out then, the economic crisis of the 1950s was actually something that was more compounded by excessive fiscal caution rather than excessive spending, like what we usually talk about. Without enough spending taking place, the economy was stagnating. This, however,
Oh, is this the argument to all the people who say trickle-down effect don't work? Like, hey, look, we're not spending money on stuff. Well, yeah, we're not also growing.
would change come the 1970s, as in 1972, this is the point that politicians would first begin to run a deficit by spending more than they could earn in a given fiscal year. Now, why then were the 70s so chaotic for the Irish, you may wonder? Well, allow me to explain. Over the course of the 1970s, the population of Ireland would increase by around 15%, which gave the government an annual increase in income of around 4%.
Oh, God, they saw, hey, look, more people equals more money.
Employment rates went up by around 1% per year, but most of these jobs were going to government employees. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm really not. In fact, so many jobs were in the government sector.
Oh, yeah, I can understand that. I can get that just for the fact that, you have a country like Ireland, so you're not really it's an island nation. So it's not like the United States where you're going to need, like, a necessary ton of power line people, plumbers, contractor, like electricians, and like they're probably not mining as much. So pretty much all they have is farming, for the most part.
That by the year 1980, a third
It's like in Harry Potter. What does anyone do after they graduate Hogwarts? They go work for the Ministry or Hogwarts.
of all jobs in Ireland were government jobs, which is a lot. It's not the most, but it's a lot. Because if you're like us here at this channel, then the last statement probably sparked a little bit of curiosity that you may have about countries and government jobs. So, for those curious, the country with the most government employees currently is China.
Oh, the Great China, West Taiwan. No, that's not a shocker either.
And those numbers are somewhere over 30 million. And that figure
God.
is constantly changing. Back during the Great Economic Reforms, China actually had something like 72% of all jobs listed as government jobs.
I'm highly disappointed in this photo that
But of course,
my man here is the only one I think actually looks like an old school Chinese person. Like, oh look, we hate the West, but we are going to dress like the West. My man's here is like, no, 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 no. I'm going classic. I'm still looking fly. I got a great beard. I like
it can be hard to verify
him right there. Asian Dumbledore looks badass.
some of these numbers because it's China. If you go by number of government employees as a percentage of all jobs, then nowadays the Nordic countries of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark hold the title for most government employees currently. These
Again, that also makes sense. There's probably not that much that they're actually exporting.
countries typically have over 25% of their total populations working for the government in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, though, we're talking about Ireland. Back to them. The new spending plans of Ireland over the course of the 70s turned into excessive spending, which turned into reckless spending over the course of the year.
I'm guessing right here, this is a bar called the White Horse. Just for the fact that that's how most people in the late 1700s, hell, in the early thousands, could not read. So they would have signs up with, like, they would be named after a color and animal. Like, oh, we're going to the White Stag. And well, there's the White Stag, or the White Horse. We're going over to the Blue Stag. And there'll be a Blue Stag. The Hog's Head, Hogwarts, for Harry Potter.
And into the early 1980s. Budget deficits and public debt would increase, leading to economic crises in the late 1980s. And for decades by this point, Ireland's economy had been so unremarkable that it had actually gotten the unenviable nickname that we all thought had died with the Ottoman Empire. It was referred to as, and I quote, the sick old man of Europe.
Is it bad? I saw there was an ad for a horse game anime, and Tomoe the VTuber popped in my head, and like, why are you guys not collabing with that chick?
Empire. It was referred to as, and I quote, the sick old man of Europe, end quote. To go from stagnant to in horrible debt was something that was depressing to kind of watch.
It's like Ireland went to college.
Not only was the government suffering during the 1980s, but the people were as well, thanks to a wildly unfair tax system that had the middle-class workers being taxed at 60% of their marginal income. As an
Christ. This warning sign, America. Just saying.
additional middle finger to the workforce, the unemployment rate had absolutely exploded to over 20%. People weren't able to pay anything for taxes because, go figure, no one was working. And so people began to leave the island, simply in search for better opportunities. Overseas
Okay, let's slightly call that. I called that one.
immigration reached over 1% of the entire population, which is really damn high. In comparison, the country with the largest population of its people living outside of their country of origin is currently India, with somewhere around 15 million Indians living outside of India. Mexico is number 2 at around 11 million, while China has got around 10 million of their citizens living in diaspora because of the whole civil war thing that took place a while ago. But we've kind of talked about that here before. Anyway,
If you want me to watch that video, let me know. God, like him and I need this guy and Nick, the fat electrician, just to team up because God, they could teach people so much more.
1987, things would get extra bleak when the country faced yet another economic crisis. Again, I should be saying, but wait, it gets worse because really it just fits with the t-shirts here. I swear. Merch links down below. By this point, the country's
I'll have his link to his t-shirts down below. It's a shot down below. I just find it fair if I'm gonna react and watch your stuff to help my channels grow. I'm gonna plug your merch. I don't have merch.
deficit had bloated to being over 15% of its entire yearly GDP. Yeah, when you're spending 15% more than you're making every single year, it's a little bit of a problem. Usually, target deficits are...
I'm recording this while our government is shut down. Just point it out.
Anywhere between 1 to 3%? 4% maybe? With the idea then being that if you have 5 or 6% economic growth, then, oh hey, you've actually made more than you have spent, so it's fine? But yeah, that wasn't really the case for Ireland. The party in power at the time, Fianna Fáil, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of, don't get... Listen, I've cracked some jokes. Irish people, I understand. I'm going to mispronounce some things. This party made efforts to stem the financial bleeding. They reduced public spending, cut taxes, promoted competition in the markets, and it just so happens that this coincided with the development of the European Union's single European market, which began the rapid economic growth that Ireland would actually become synonymous for over the course of the next quarter century or so.
Oh yeah, this is when Europe just developed the EU and Ireland jumped in on it.
Here, things were actually going to turn around. In the early days, over 50% of Irish goods and trade ran through the United Kingdom. Today, that is less than 10% of Irish exports that actually go through the UK, which is a testament to just how far the country has come in the last century. This diversification of trading partners can be seen as one of the key reasons for the success of the Irish economy at
I forgot wool. Wool has to be a massive export out of Ireland.
all. The 1990s were almost as good to Ireland as the 1980s had been to Japan. This is a period of time that would earn the Irish economy its nickname of the Celtic Tiger, with the nickname itself being a reference to the nickname given to the four Asian tigers of the late 20th century world economy: Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Each of these countries would experience massive growth in a short period of time, with their economies rising more than 7% a year. So, Ireland gets the nickname Celtic Tiger. But
Again, I would love to see a photo of that.
does that actually mean that its economy lives up to that hype? Well, yeah, at the time it really does. At the start of the 1990s, Ireland suffered from a high rate of poverty, high unemployment, rising inflation, low economic growth, and the exposure to the new, wider market of Europe rather than the more limited and stagnant British market caused an explosion of growth in a short period of time for it.
So what you're saying is the reason why Ireland didn't grow economically before is the British. So it's all England's fault. Okay, good. Thank you. End of video.
To give you an example of just how much growth it experienced, from 1995 to the year 2000, the Irish economy grew at an average rate of 9.4% per year,
Christ.
which is huge. And if that's not good enough, it would continue to grow at an average of nearly 6% per year every year until 2008, which
God damn. Impressive. Yeah.
is amazing. Between 1985 and 2002, private sector jobs would increase by 59%. The economy shifted from an agriculture to a knowledge-based economy, focusing on services and high-tech industries. In fact, industry, which accounts for 46% of GDP and around 80% of Irish exports, has replaced agriculture as the country's leading sector.
Yeah, because doesn't Ireland have a very tax-friendly model to corporations?
In the 1990s, the provision of subsidies and investment capital by Irish state organizations such as IDA Ireland would encourage high-profile companies such as Dell, Intel, and Microsoft to relocate to Ireland. These companies were attracted to Ireland because of its EU membership, relatively low wages, government grants, and low taxes.
So wait, you're telling me that Ireland's economy grew because of low wages, low taxes, and affordability? Huh.
Enterprise Ireland, a state agency, would provide financial, technical, and social support to startup businesses. Additionally, the building of the International Financial Services Center in Dublin led to the creation of 14,000 high-value jobs in the accounting, legal, and financial management sectors.
I know you can't see it, but god damn, my face just squinted like, what the hell? And this also looks beautiful. I need to go to Ireland someday.
It was huge, and as a late knock-on effect from the early part of the Celtic Tiger economic boom, by the early 2000s there was a construction and housing boom in Ireland. At one point, construction represented 12% of the entire Irish economy.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that as a long-lasting thing like construction, because you figure if you're a small island, you'll run out of land eventually.
This boom was so strong that in 2004, Ireland built 80,000 new homes compared to the UK's 160,000.
God, ads are like a good 3 levels a lot higher volume-wise than Mr. I think his name's Seth.
Which, yeah, okay, the UK built more, but the difference is that the UK has 15 times the population of Ireland, and in turn, housing prices.
Also, the UK, as a generalization, is also England, Scotland, and Wales, and technically Northern Ireland. So, it's really 4 countries compared to 1.
Prices would then double between the years 2000 and 2006, which is great for.
Also, I would never want to live in a place like this. God, no one has their own yard. No one has room to park. God, you fart too loud, your neighbor's gonna hear it.
Investors, not necessarily as great for people that are still living paycheck to paycheck, but that is something that we're going to kind of get into later. Unfortunately, the Irish construction sector depended far too heavily on just a few companies to build housing, and this would come back to bite them in the ass in the future. Remember this issue with housing, as we're going to get back to that later. Really, the cause of the Celtic Tiger period seems to have been a product of a young population with a new drive to succeed, mixed with the arrival of American tech companies such as Intel. Throw in low taxes, regulatory practices that disproportionately favored businesses, and a
Yeah, I hope he touches on the fact that Ireland is also really religious. Like, they're very Catholic. So it's like you have a high religious, moral country with low taxes, with a lot of business going in here, and a young workforce.
young, technically proficient workforce, and you've got the ingredients for a massive economic turnaround. The timing of Ireland joining the EU could not have been any better either, as it opened Ireland up to a whole new continent of trading partners and reduced its economic reliance on doing trade with the United Kingdom, which we're going to have to cover here at one point as to just how badly the UK stagnated and why the UK of today is much poorer, it seems, than what it was decades ago. During this time, the country experienced a period of economic growth that transformed it from one of Western Europe's poorer countries into easily one of its wealthiest. Disposable income soared to record levels, enabling a huge rise in consumer spending, with foreign holidays accounting for over 91% of total holiday expenditure in 2004. However, of course, with all things, there are things that are not so positive. The gap between the highest and lowest income households widened in the 5-year period leading up to 2004 to 2005, which is naturally going to happen when you have many successful companies. Unemployment would fall from 18%.
But yeah, you still see it everywhere. It's like if the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, the rich will get richer at a higher rate because they're probably putting in more money into trying to, get rich. Where if I'm going to my 9 to 5 as a retail worker, yeah, I'm doing good work and I'm working hard, but I'm not doing the same thing as someone foreman of a construction site.
In the late 1980s to 4.5% by the end of 2007, and average industrial wages would grow at one of the highest rates in Europe. But because of this, inflation would inch up to 5% per year towards the end of the Tiger period, pushing Irish prices up to those of Nordic Europe. Even though wage rates were roughly the same as the UK, things started to get much more expensive, even as people weren't necessarily able to produce more. The national debt
That's where it is. There's the problem.
had remained constant during the boom, but the GDP to debt ratio would rise due to the dramatic rise in GDP. Still, the new wealth resulted in large investments in modernizing Irish infrastructure and cities. The National Development Plan led to improvements in roads, and new transport services were developed, such as the Lewis Light rail lanes, the Dublin Port Tunnel, and extension of the Cork Suburban Rail. Local authorities enhanced city streets and built monuments such as the Spire of Dublin. And now, interestingly enough, all of this success changed Ireland's historic trend of emigration, exceeding immigration as workers from across Europe.
And here we go. This is probably the part where he's going to say they're going to bring in cheaper people than the locals. And
Especially from Baltic states and Poland, began to rush to find work in the newest, most promising economy available. What tended to happen was that these immigrants would obtain work in the retail or service sectors as the young Irish people were increasingly foregoing these lines of work for more higher paying jobs in the financial and tech sectors. And by 2007, 10% of the entire Irish workforce was foreign born. And normally, that can cause a bit of a problem. And yes, there are going to be some issues, but at the time, Ireland was still very pro-immigration, especially.
well, yeah. So you figure if you have 10% of the workforce from other places, there's going to be cultural, religious. Saying if they're not religious. I'm not saying like negativity towards a religion. I'm just saying if you bring a lot of people who aren't religious into a place that's highly religious, and they're going to slowly start. They're not assimilating. it's not going to be a good thing. If you're not assimilating to where you're moving, it's not. It's going to cause a rift at some point.
Especially in comparison to everything that had been experienced over the previous centuries. This is one of those things that I do have to kind of touch upon when talking about things with immigration, because it's never a purely good or purely bad thing. It's something that just is. Done in the right way, it works well. Done in the wrong way, and you see a lot of consequences like what we have in the modern day. Still though, with high levels of growth comes higher levels of inflation, and unfortunately for those looking to find a place at this time, Ireland's wealth is extremely unevenly distributed. In fact, in 2004, the United Nations released a report stating the wealth inequality of countries around the world, and Ireland actually came in second place, right behind the United States. This inflation and
Yeah, but how much of that is because like American companies are quote unquote in Ireland, but still operating stateside?
rising prices hit the capital of Dublin the hardest, causing housing prices to shoot up. The thing is, in the case of Ireland, the country is essentially spread out like France, with the greater Paris metropolitan area as the heart of industry, finance, technology, and business in the nation. That's Dublin. This would affect roughly 1 of every 4 Irish citizens, since the greater Dublin metro area contained over 1 million people, compared to the entire island's population of only around 4 million in the year 2000. Which, oh dear God, I need to do a series on how certain capital cities are basically killing their countries. The worst example that I can think of here is Seoul, South Korea, but we're gonna do that at a later point.
Well, yeah, and you can almost make the argument when it comes to states voting. Like, if you look at a state like California, New York, hell, even my home state of New Jersey, it's like the vast majority of the state will vote, let's say, red. And then those pocket cities that have the densest population all vote similar way because they all live in the same area, so they all have the same mindset. And then it's like, oh, these state flipped. It's like, no, it's just this city here. Like if you look at the last election, look at like Texas, good example. Even though I voted red, but look at every major city is voting blue.
If you're curious about how those numbers look today, the population of the greater Dublin metro area is around 1.5 million, with the population of the island being near around 5.5 million people. So it got worse. This rapid period of economic growth improved the lives of a large number of the population and can be seen over a decade of solid foundational growth, but it does come with a cost. As the year 2007 began, Ireland had nothing but high hopes for the future, but those were about to be tested when the world would slip into a massive financial recession. The worldwide economic recession of 2007 really was the most impactful global incident in the last 30 years or so to occur, arguably even more so than the events of the September 11th attacks in New York in 2001. This is because countries that had nothing to do.
Well, yes, globally, 9/11 isn't as massive as the 2007 economical disaster. Because you figure this was an isolated attack that then caused an effect. This is like an economy level.
With being allied with the US militarily, were affected by this recession that rippled out, affecting nearly every country on the globe. We should really do a video in dedicated detail about the 2007 recession someday, going into its causes and major players and widespread reach. We've gone over it a bit when talking about things in other videos, but it probably deserves its own thing. Comment down below if that's something.
He does what I do when I'm doing like live streams where I hear something. I'm like, that would make a fun video. And then he just starts going off on a tangent of like, oh yeah, here we go.
Something that you'd like to hear. Either way, like most countries in the world, any growth the Irish economy was experiencing would end abruptly when the global recession of 2007 would occur. And by 2011, Ireland's GDP had contracted by 14%, and unemployment rates would rise to 14% as well. This economic slump would last all.
And this is where the immigration problem will have, because people who affected the most will probably be at the top, like the middle ground, where they fall back to a retail job. And all the retail jobs are taken.
All the way until 2014, when the Irish economy would then experience one of the greatest financial turnarounds, as well as one of the strongest periods of success of any country in Europe. Now, how would they accomplish this while the neighboring British economy was absolutely floundering? Well, the very devious answer was that foreign multinational companies began to run profits through Ireland and not actually doing any real business in the country.
That is my biggest issue when it comes to as like someone who lives in the United States. We should not allow companies, Disney, to claim that they're Disney Cruise, for example. Like we're Disney Cruise out of Barbados because they have better taxes than America, but everything's stationed stateside. So if you're stationed stateside, then business should be stateside.
In other words, Ireland became the world's biggest tax haven. As economist Paul Krugman would famously describe the overnight 26% rise in the economy, it was the effects of, and I quote, leprechaun economics, end quote. Yeah, which pissed off a lot of Irish economists and financial consultants, but that pretty much describes what was going down. The EU Tax Observatory would calculate that 140 billion euros of profits from US and other multinational companies were diverted into Ireland in order to save on taxes. This is the equivalent to half the size of the official Irish estimate of the size of its real economy, and in addition, there are taxes unpaid by multinationals as a result of bloated tax allowances for depreciation, i.e. tax allowances for the cost of replacing capital equipment, buildings, intellectual property like patents, brands, etc. Important among the...
Just think how the American economy would look if, those companies were actually paying taxes in America. Then again, our government overspends so much on stupid shit that it wouldn't really matter.
These are depreciation allowances for global aircraft leases, where, amazingly, Ireland somehow dominates the world.
So, wait, aircraft leases?
Leases, where, amazingly, Ireland somehow dominates the world. Yeah, the Irish profits tax rate of 12.5% has been one of the lowest in the world and is half that of the UK. But
Okay, so their taxes are stupidly cheap.
this is only the tip of the tax haven iceberg, my friends, because Irish tax rules would allow companies to reduce their taxable profits so that the actual tax rate was only like 4%. Since
Oh, so make it cheaper for companies to want to kind of go there.
this is a fraction of what the companies would pay in the UK, USA, France, or Germany, it's really not surprising that they strive to claim that their profits are actually being made in Ireland. So, how does this kind of economic smoke and mirrors actually work? Well, this type of thing typically happens in one of three ways. Firstly, companies can manipulate intergroup export and import prices, what are known as transfer prices.
Yeah, but that's kind of so it's like they're saying like you import it into Ireland. Like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, we're building a car in Mexico, and then we're like almost done. We finish the car in Ireland, then we export it from Ireland, the whole car.
For instance, a subsidiary located in a high-tax country can purchase services, for instance, management advice or financial services, something like that, from a related part of the company in Ireland at an artificially high price. This shifts income away from the high-tax to the low-tax country. Alternatively, by undercharging for components that were being assembled in Ireland, a foreign-owned Irish factory can appear to be more profitable when the company reports reduced profits in high-tax countries. Secondly, multinationals can use intergroup lending and borrowing, with affiliates in high-tax countries borrowing money from related parties in low-tax countries. Thirdly, companies can strategically locate trademarks, intellectual property, and logos in tax havens and charge subsidiaries in high-tax countries for the...
Ah, there it is. That's how what most companies are doing. They're claiming that all their trademarks, despite being developed in, UK, France, Ireland, UK, France, United States, Canada, all the trademarks are filed in Ireland.
the right to use these assets. The corresponding royalty payments reduce income in high-tax countries and increase it in the tax havens. Pharmaceutical or electronic firms, which manufacture things like Viagra in Cork or provide computer services in Limerick, depend on expensive research and development that is undertaken in the USA or elsewhere. If the company can charge this research to an Irish subsidiary and get it deducted from Irish taxes, then the taxable profit becomes very small. As a result, the majority of American firms in Ireland are in chemicals, pharma, or electronics. and these mainly foreign-owned sectors account for nearly 80% of Irish profits tax revenue.
All that money we are missing. God damn. Yeah, and I'm gonna throw dollars to donuts right here. I'm betting our politicians have their hands in it. That's where they're making all their money from. Something similar.
It's ridiculous, and much of this has been going on for quite literally decades. Even 30 years ago, a major US beverage firm reported profits of nearly £1 million per employee for adding water to syrup and putting it in bottles. I'll leave it up to you to guess exactly what that was.
Coke. That's how they do it. Look up how Fanta was invented.
However, the scale of
Like, Coca-Cola just sends people the syrup. They then add the carbonated water. Therefore, guess what? We send them the syrup, but they actually produce the soda.
global tax evasion would ramp up around a decade ago, especially in Ireland. As I mentioned here before, in 2015, Irish GDP would rise overnight by 26%, something that is just absolutely impossible in real-world economies. The cause of this unbelievable large rise in national income was concealed for 2 years, but eventually it emerged that the US company Apple had transferred $300 billion of intellectual property overnight to Dublin. This
Shocking there. Shocking that, the same time that every iPhone has been, like, stupidly going up in prices. Like, Christ, I could buy a brand new V2 model. Probably cheaper than the newest iPhone.
amount was larger than the entire size of the Irish national income in 2015. Not all of it counted as current income and hence as GDP, but earnings from the intellectual property and depreciation allowances against tax did count in this way. On top,
Really, think about this. Like, you bought an iPhone 5, 6, 7, 8. It was like $500. You're like, alright, it's a small bit of money, but I own it outright. It's like, now it's like your new phone is starting at like $1,600. It's like 3 times as more expensive as it was. For what? A slightly bigger screen? Slightly better camera?
of the transfers of intellectual property is the growth of the Irish aircraft leasing industry, which incredibly owns like 70% of the world's commercial airliners and leases these out to airlines. By 2017, an Irish Central Bank Review article would report that an Irish-owned aircraft took off somewhere in the world every 2 seconds. In 2017, there were 596 Irish companies buying aircraft to lease out, and the
Yeah, this is the same thing as like the Barbados with like cruise ships.
industry has grown substantially since then. The profits of the operation are recorded in Dublin, even though the planes are almost never going to land there. Even at minimal tax rates, the tax revenues from this level of business transactions are large for the Irish government. To explain this further, Bob Liddon, an accountant with a background in aircraft leasing, has recently reported on tax evasion in Ireland, with his figures suggesting that Irish companies buy $150 billion worth of aircraft each year.
God damn! I'm going 150, easily making 300 back.
With a total stock worth perhaps $1 trillion in all,
Jesus Christ!
or 4 times the entire size of the annual income in Ireland's real economy. That is extensive, and that is just one industry. The
Yeah, but if you also do something like this, guess what? That actually probably not trickling down. Where if you were to have a company, I'm gonna use Coca-Cola again, and this is actually slightly real. I can somewhat speak on that, but it's like way back when, when I think it was Trump's first time office, when they gave the companies the tax break. Some companies, Pepsi, they gave their employees, my area, they gave their employees raises. Cool. Coke bought more stuff. It's like, okay, cool, we're buying Fanta, we're buying body armor, we're buying this, we're buying that. Well, guess that also does. It means more hours for their employees to stock more products.
Irish Central Bank Review article stated that the main reason for this industry being located in Ireland was the light and permissive tax regime. Liddon would go further and suggest that aircraft leasing has grown in Ireland rather than in low tax regimes like the Caribbean islands because of the physical presence of multinational companies that initially were attracted by the low tax rates.
Also, if you figure you're on plane, the Caribbean islands don't have as much near them. It would not really make sense. Where if you're in Ireland, you can hit pretty much all of Europe within like minutes.
These companies can invest up to 15% of the value of each aircraft, with the rest being borrowed from banks and other investors. Under Irish law, the multinationals can then set 1/8 of the total value of the aircraft against their own Irish tax bill each year. Liddon estimates that this tax allowance is worth $84 billion a year, saving $14 billion in taxes every year. Rental income from the aircraft leases is estimated at $110 billion a year, or nearly half the size of the Irish real economy, but this is used to pay the borrowing costs. The real advantage of the multinationals based in Ireland is the tax relief. The industry also employs several thousand very highly paid people in the Dublin finance sector, as well as lawyers and indirect beneficiaries, including estate agents and high-end restaurants.
So basically, unless you're going into accounting or being a lawyer in Ireland, it's going to be hard to get a super good job. That's what's basically what I'm hearing right now. It's like, also, like I said, imagine if we just had competitive company rates, not even like that high. Like some of the, how much more money in programs we could use. Granted, like I said, our government was spending on stupid shit, but still.
Now, as you can imagine, the effects of distortion that this causes surrounding the Irish economy is massive. It is immense. The financial economy, based on tax evasion, is around the same size as the real economy itself. The staggering 26% rise in GDP in the first months of 2015 is not anything that a real economy is actually capable of doing. Even China, at its peak economic growth, only averaged around 10% growth per year, and even that was shocking to the West back then. Western European countries rarely achieve more than 3% growth per year, though that is something that we also probably need to dive into as to why so much of Europe has been stagnating for the longest time.
Ooh, let's see. They're all not actually like. I think the reason why Europe is actually stagnant is actually because of the EU. They're all trying to be like the same cookie cutter thing, which is okay. But if at the same time, if you're going for like Germany, you want the German experience. I'm going to Belgium. I want the Belgian experience. I want to go to France. I want the French experience. I'm going to Estonia, just throwing out another country. I want the Estonian experience. I don't want to need to go to Poland and feel like I'm still in Germany. I want to feel like you want to actually enjoy each country's culture and history.
Corporate tax revenues constitute around 21% of all taxes paid in Ireland, that being compared with around 7% in the UK and up from only 9%, which is what it was in 2010. Almost 90% of this is paid by multinational companies, with most coming from only 10 US-owned firms.
Only 10's not that bad, but those 10, we need to start investigating.
3 US-owned firms contribute only 10
I think we need to start looking into those 10, just saying.
US-owned firms. Just 3 US-owned firms contribute a third of tax revenues on corporate profits, and the largest of these, by far, as you can probably guess from that 26% rise,
Apple.
is Apple. Other companies from the United States that have located large portions of their business to Ireland to avoid paying taxes are tech companies like Google, Facebook, Intel, Microsoft, Dell.
So all the big high-tech companies that basically are friends, super buddy with each other, they keep, working together to screw over everybody else.
SanDisk, Adobe, and Oracle. Then you've got pharmaceutical companies like Ingersoll Rand, Allergan, Merck, Boston Scientific, and Pfizer.
Boston Scientific. Now in Ireland. It's like, what?
Among so many others. It's just stupidly huge, and if this degree of tax evasion is so massive and so well known to experts, why is something not being done to control it? Well, the
Because the politicians are making too much money off it because they're doing the same damn thing.
answer is that several attempts have been made, but multinational companies and the Irish government have usually been able to circumvent attempts. The UK government in 2007 and the US government 10 years later did try and legislate to prevent firms from doing exactly what had been done here before and move their registered headquarters to Ireland and other tax havens to avoid paying taxes, and this did largely work, but
Then those companies started paying our politicians, being like, hey, There you go.
The other tax evasion measures listed above have remained. The OECD Club of Advanced Economics finally succeeded in 2021 in persuading most major economies to introduce a minimum profits tax rate of 15%, and this means that Ireland must raise its rate from 12.5% to 15% for foreign-owned firms, but will keep the low rate for smaller domestic firms. That being said, the OECD
Oh, that's like a tariff. God, people.
CD agreement has been subsequently watered down and has done little to prevent around a third of offshore profits of global multinational companies being routed via tax havens like Ireland. But, at least it's a start. Ultimately, the problem could be solved tomorrow if the US went and passed a law banning the use of these tax havens by closing the loopholes that allow them to claim their businesses as being done on foreign soil, but,
Good, yeah. Hey, any company that's founded in the United States or mainly located in the United States must only pay taxes here. If you pay taxes to another country, we will get rid of the benefits of being in America.
money likes to protect money, and as long as you have people in government or those in companies or even systems in place that are willing to ignore things like this in order to get contributions in some way, I wouldn't really expect too much to change regarding Ireland's loopholes. And that is not a political attack on any one party or individual. That is something.
Oh, God, no, I agree 100% there. I'm insulting both parties on this one. That's on both sides. That's why you should vote Brendan Herrera if you're in Texas, District 23. I'm not in Texas, so I can't vote.
Something that you see with politicians quite literally across the world. It's just the US is the overall biggest economy in the world, and so that is something that is way more blatant. The other alternative is that Ireland could decide to change their tax system significantly, but
Why would they? They're making hand over fist money that they can hopefully use to better enrich their citizens.
that's just it. Why would they want to? It's been working for them so far, after all, and they haven't really had to do anything to rake in massive amounts of profits. After all, with a population of only 5.5 million, if they're able to pull in companies from countries with hundreds of millions of people making significantly greater profits, them getting a small cut of it is way more effective than actually having to produce a better domestic industry.
And if anything, they could use that profit to support actually good domestic industries, like Guinness. Now, whoever makes like wool sweatshirts, they could give these companies even bigger tax breaks because they're getting so much money.
Well, better in one way. There are many, many downsides that happen from this. And one of the other problems that Ireland is currently facing is a massive housing crisis. The financial crash
Yep, here comes immigration again.
of 2008 led to the mass exodus of large property developers from the state. The construction industry still has not recovered to its pre-crash levels, with Central Statistics Office (CSO) data from 2024 showing employment in the sector is still well below its peak in the mid-2000s. What really makes this worse is that because of its relatively small population, the economic recession of 2007 really hit them hard when it came to brain drain in certain sectors. One of those was construction. A lot of skilled laborers had left the country and hadn't been replaced by immigrants who were traditionally working in other parts of the economy. Compounding the problems, there are only two large developers, Cairn and Lenvig, which Lenvig.
Yeah, and I bet countries like Ireland you couldn't have as like Celtics construction company just come in like, hey, we're a construction company. I'm hiring good people. They would probably really fight you on that.
Lenvig? I know I'm saying this wrong. Either way, these two have the capacity to deliver homes at scale. That's it. The rest of the state's developers are small to mid-sized housing providers that struggle to access the necessary finance required to build at scale. As Dermot O'Leary, economist at Goodbody Stockbrokers, would say, quote, if Ireland is going to scale up housing output to 50 to 60,000 a year over the next several years, it needs bigger scale players, end quote. But okay, why?
Yeah, there's your issue. The big companies are only going to attack big companies.
Why can't these smaller developers scale up? Well, as he would explain, quote, banks are still quite cautious about lending into the construction space, so that constrains the ability of the builders to scale up, end quote. The complexity of the planning system and delays in grant approval also hamper the sector in delivering housing quickly. But, at the same time, there's also strict and cumbersome public land procurement rules, as well as competition for land, builders, and labor, which proved to be significant challenges for local authorities, most of whom are quite small organizations.
This is also, again, kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about major cities and population capitals destroying its own country. If the bulk of the people who live in Ireland live in Dublin, and you say have a naturally cool forest, they're going to want to vote to protect that natural cool forest, not the locals who are like, hey, that forest is rotting and isn't that good. We need more houses in order to get outvoted.
Attracting more private international investors into the Irish housing market has been the biggest talking point of the government parties in recent years. It remains to be seen if their efforts will actually be successful, but it's already kind of risky to depend on foreign investment for building local housing. Not to mention, with all the immigration that I was talking about here before, the amount of demand that has been placed on housing has skyrocketed, with little being able to be produced to supply said population.
Also, they build houses out of mostly bricks. So it takes a lot longer and more resources to build it than our nice wooden structures here.
Leading to many negative feelings, though that is something that we will, again, probably need to do as a separate video. So yeah, similar to that whole video that I did talking about how the Chinese economy is fake, to summarize, the Irish economy accomplished a rapid boom, largely due to multinational corporations using it as a tax haven. This only got more entrenched as time went on, and at the same time, the Irish housing crisis consists of an overly complex planning system, a lack of zoned land, difficulty in raising finance, and the absence of large developers in both the public and the private sector. And each of these problems are significant issues that aren't looking to go away anytime soon. In fact, if anything, it is getting worse, and now scores of people are leaving Ireland. The youngest, the brightest workers are leaving because they cannot afford housing. The economy does not have jobs for them to be able to take. There is no point in staying, and so they are leaving.
There's also, again, and I don't think he's going to touch on it, a lot of different religious factions all moving into an area trying to change the culture.
What is left at the end of this is very uncertain, but it's likely not a good thing. That has been the story of how the Irish economy turned itself around and why it basically only exists on paper now, while the real Irish economy acts like a false representation of what living in the country is actually like. This, combined with the issues that lead to the housing crisis, which have caused the Irish government to be unprepared for the recent population growth that it has received, is scrambling to find answers to their biggest problems, but they're not really figuring it out. Will they be successful in turning around the current housing crisis in the most fake economy we have probably seen here since China? Maybe, but we don't really know. We'll have to wait and see. With that, we're going to end things here today. Thank you, my friends, for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you all here next time. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you could let me know in the comment section below what kinds of things you'd want to see next, I'm all ears. I've said it like 5 or 6 times over the course of this video. There are many different videos that we could do. Either way, thank you for watching. I'll see you all. Goodbye.
Alright. So, this is just an outsider looking in type thing. Countries like Ireland, even the Nordic countries, and shut up, you. In countries like that, I think their biggest issue at times isn't they don't have land. Oh, they do have land. That land's a big issue. It's more or less they don't want to tear down old stuff. Like, some things are so old and historic and been around for so long that they're just like, we can't change it. Where if they were to say, hey, how about we build more skyscrapers? How about we build more big housing complexes? Like, you look at a country like Japan, they have a lot of 3-bedroom like apartment housing complexes that can actually support a lot of major people. Just based off his photos of Ireland, looks like a lot of houses are just your old run-of-the-mill 3-story houses. So you're not getting as much. I don't know. It's definitely interesting to look at. It's fascinating to see how countries are faking ways to get more money out of people, and the fact that how much our own country is losing in taxes just for the fact that major corporations are going to places like Ireland. So, but that's it. If you like the more history dive, let me know of additional history videos you would want me to listen to and react to and watch and give like a like idiot's opinion on. But that's it. That's all I have. I'll see you weird people later.